Hello, wizards, witches, and everyone in between. My name is Emma, and today I will be doing my first recommendations video. So I asked on Twitter for people to send me their favorite Halloween candy or candy in general, and from the ones I got, I picked 8. So today I will be giving you 8 book recommendations. I'm very excited. So I made sure to pick some that I haven't talked about on my channel before because I don't want to sound like a broken record. So let's start with the most popular and one I'm sure that you have all heard of. So the first candy, and the candy that several people told me was their favorite, is Reeses. Someone did a survey of the United States and found that Reeses is like the most popular candy in the US, so shout out. So when I think of Reeses, I think of very popular, very well known, and also like smooth, easy to eat. So translate that into a book that everyone has heard of, many people have read, some like it, some don't. Reeses also come in like, pumpkin shape, tombstone shape. You got like the little cups, you got the regular size cups. There's a lot of different variety with that. So I was also looking for a book that has a lot of variety of characters. So for this, I'm gonna go with The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Very popular on BookTube. I know a lot of Reeses fans obviously would think that Reeses are popular for a good reason. That's how I feel with this. I think The Cruel Prince is very hyped and talked about for a good reason. This, I think, is going to be in my top 5 reads of the year. Really, really good. I've read a lot of YA fantasy that I didn't really love this year, but this one was so good. I read it in like 2 days. Obviously, there's a lot of characters. There's a lot of different types of characters. The two main ones being mortals and fairies. I'm sure we all know what this is about, but it's about this girl Jude, who is a human, and at the very, very beginning of the book, her dad comes and kills her family and takes her and her sister and her older sister away to a magical land. And there's a bunch of conflict with, the mortals versus the fairies, and that's all I'm gonna say. I'm sure a lot of you have already read it, but I really, really enjoyed this, and this reminds me of a Reese's peanut butter cup. Next one is one that no one actually told me was their favorite, which makes sense, but when I was first thinking about doing this video, this one just popped into my head, and I wanted an excuse to talk about this book. So next up is a vanilla Tootsie Roll. So when I think of a vanilla Tootsie Roll, I think of kind of like a plot twist. When you think of Tootsie Roll, you think chocolate. And then once you've wrapped your head around, oh, they have fruit flavored Tootsie Rolls, right? Like the green is lime, the orange is orange. You see a blue wrapper, and I would think like blue raspberry. It's vanilla. Vanilla is not a fruit. I don't know what is going on with vanilla Tootsie Rolls, but they're a thing. So they're kind of scary. They got a big plot twist there because they're not what you'd think they would be. So for this, I'm going to go with House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. I think if you guys have watched my recent videos, you all know this is, I think, my most recent 5-star read. Absolutely loved it. So dark, so twisted, and peppered with plot twists. I was shook like 10 different times throughout reading this book. It was so, so good. It's like a dark twist on the fairy tale of the 12 Dancing Princesses, and ooh, it was just dark and mysterious. It gave me chills. Check that one out if you want some dark and spooky somethings. All right, next we have got Three Musketeers, and when I think of Three Musketeers, I think of something kind of light and fluffy. I don't read a lot of light and fluffy things, so what I'm going to recommend for this may not be the lightest or the fluffiest, but I think it is for me, and that is Starry Eyes by Jen Bennett. I absolutely love this. YA contemporaries with a romance that is not my genre, but I really like this, and I was actually very invested in the relationship in this. I absolutely loved that it took place outside the majority of the time. It is about this girl named Zori and this guy named Lennon, and they used to be friends, but now they're enemies, and they end up on this camping hiking trip together. and it was so good. You know me, I love anything that takes place in the wilderness, but this was definitely like a very light and fluffy, contemporary, just feel-good read, and I really, really enjoyed it. Next up is Snickers, and now when I think of Snickers, I used to get Snickers confused with Milky Ways, and the way I differentiate it now, obviously Snickers have peanuts and Milky Ways don't, which makes Snickers more complex, I think, than what you think they would be. And they're more complex flavor-wise than you might think they would be. So I was looking for a book that is more complex than what you assume it would be like based on either the cover or the genre or the author or anything like that. So for this, I'm going to go with Dear John by Nicholas Sparks. Nicholas Sparks doesn't have the best reputation. However, I read this in February of this year, and because I was determined to read all of the Nicholas Sparks that I'd had on my shelf for like 10 years, and this was actually very good. It didn't have like a fairy tale ending. It was more gritty and dealt with like some really tough problems, and so it was a lot more complex than I thought it would be from like a Nicholas Sparks romance. So this follows this girl named Savannah and this guy John, and he enlists in the army, and it's kind of like their long distance relationship. And then when he comes back to visit, there's just, I don't want to give too much away, but there's a lot of complicated things with their family lives and then their relationship between the two of them, and, you know, them growing up and becoming different people. The writing was very cringy at times, but the actual plot line was really good, and I really liked that it dealt with a lot of like complex themes, which was not something I was expecting from Nicholas Sparks. Next is candy corn. Now, I know candy corn is a very divisive candy. A lot of people think it's absolute trash, and a lot of people love it, but I'm not gonna go off of that. When I think of candy corn, I think of something small, quick to eat, colorful, and reminds me of like children's Halloween decorations, you know, like it's just kind of embodies Halloween, like a children's Halloween party. You'd expect candy corn to be there. So for this, I'm going to go with The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. This is a short book, a classic, just like candy corn. Very bright. All the covers I've seen it are very like nice and bright, and it's obviously a kid's book. This is just such a fun, quick read. It just makes you happy. And even if you hate candy corn, like I do, I can't deny that like seeing it makes me happy. Like it just embodies like fun Halloween times, and that's what this book did for me. I'm not a huge fan of the movie, but the book I thought was so good. I think we all know this about Dorothy Goes to Oz. It just has so many iconic things going on in here. The Yellow Brick Road, Auntie M, and candy corn's iconic. So there you go. All right, next is Mounds. And I did not know what a Mounds bar was until it was explained on Twitter. And Mounds is coconut covered in dark chocolate. And so when I think coconut, I think tropical. And then dark chocolate obviously is darker than milk chocolate. So what's a book that has some tropical vibes or takes place on a tropical island but also is dark? And for this, I'm going to go with a book that I actually finished yesterday, and that is Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman. So this book, the first chapter, starts out with this wife telling us how hard it is to dig a grave. And she's actively digging this grave, and we're hearing about how much harder it is than she thought it would be, her wondering how deep she has to make it, and how she's running out of time because the sun's gonna go up soon. What a way to start, right? So then it flashes back to her honeymoon with her husband, and they go to Bora Bora, tropical. They're scuba diving, they discover something in the water, and something sunk underwater, and they get caught up in this whole big mess, basically. It's a really, really good thriller. I absolutely loved it. I haven't heard many people talk about it, so there you go. Now you know. Highly, highly recommend. It was so suspenseful that I was listening to it when I was driving yesterday, and my heart was racing. There's like 5 distinct scenes I can think of that were just like, so stressful. And you're like, how is this gonna get pulled off? How is this character gonna do this in time and not get caught? It was good, okay? So good. So next, someone said candy apples. Now, candy apples are another like classic, iconic Halloween fall dessert. Apples themselves obviously are healthier for you, and candy apples are difficult to eat. So I translated this into a classic that is kind of difficult to get through and benefits you in the end. So for this, I decided to go with Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. You might have heard me talk about this before, I don't know. My favorite book is based off of this book, and so I also enjoyed this book. But this is a classic, obviously. Virginia Woolf, amazing. But her writing is very difficult to get through. It's definitely very kind of lyrical, and you know, the sentences are long and the structure's kind of different. So you really have to put in the effort to get through it, just like a candy apple. However, it pays off at the end because this book changed my entire outlook on life. I'm not kidding. That sounds very dramatic, but I read this when I was 15 or so, and after reading it and like thinking about what it was about and what it was saying about life and the meaning of life and getting through tough times and struggling to see the bright side of things and feeling overwhelmed and anxious and thinking too far ahead and all this kind of stuff, this book provides so much comfort for me. And like everything from this book I can quote and remind myself of and make myself feel better when I'm not having a good mental health day. This book means a lot to me, but it is very, you know, it's a lot to get through. Basically, this book follows this lady called Mrs. Dalloway, and she's planning a party, but she's stuck in this role of, you know, wife and party planner, and she's going about her day running all these errands for her party and seeing other people like walking their dog in the park and thinking about how she wishes she had the freedom to do that. But how also she's trying to think of all these things, plan all this stuff out for tonight, but why isn't she just taking a moment and sitting down in this park and enjoying, you know, living in the present? And I'm hoping this makes sense, but it has honestly shaped the way that I view a lot of things, so I had to mention it. Next is peanut M&Ms. And so when I think of peanut M&Ms, obviously you have like, on the outside they look different, you have the different colors, but then they all work together in the end. They're all very chocolatey, and peanut ones in particular have an extra crunchy thing. They have an extra like flavor going on than just normal M&Ms. There's more substance there. So for this, I decided Jesus. So for this, I decided to choose Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I recently reread this. I had forgotten like everything about it, and I absolutely loved it. This book has so many, like, it follows a family of sisters, right? So you would think of like a bunch of M&Ms, but they're all unique, and the way it's written, you really get a sense of who each of them are. So Jo would be maybe like a blue M&M, and I think Beth would be a yellow M&M. And just the complexity and the things and the trials that this family goes through in this book is really like, there's more substance to it than you would think. I don't want to trash any other authors from this time period, but there are some that I've read that their works don't have as much substance to them. And so I think that's what makes this a peanut M&M and some other people just, you know, your regular milk chocolate M&M. This is a good time. You follow this mom and her 4 daughters, and each daughter really wants to do different things with their lives, and you follow kind of Meg and Jo the most, the 2 oldest, and they're struggling with poverty, they're struggling with their dad being gone in the war, and it's just really good. All right, last but not least is Laffy Taffy. So when I think of Laffy Taffy, I think of sweet, sticky, And so I was looking for a book that was very sweet and had like a family or characters that stuck together. And so for this, I decided to go with The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. I didn't even realize that until just now, but you got the bee thing. Honey is sticky and sweet, so I really, that was an extra bonus that I picked this one. So this follows a mixed race family, a mom and a daughter, and they, really early on in the book, they experience like some really bad racism. This is set in South Carolina in the 1960s. So they experience really bad racism, and the mom like stands up for them and defends herself, and a bunch of stuff goes down and they end up moving. And so they go to this other town that the daughter Lily, like her biological mom, was killed like when she was really, really young. And so this town that her and her adopted mom go to kind of has secrets about her biological mom. And they live in this house with these three sisters who are beekeepers, and it has such warm family vibes. Just the bonds between the sisters and the bonds between Lily and her mom and Lily and the sisters and everybody, like they really do stick together, and it's a beautiful story, very well written, and I really, really enjoyed it. All right, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you have a wonderful Halloween full of lots of amazing candy, and stay safe and have fun, and I will see you next time. Bye!